South Dakota, there's a critical threat to medical marijuana. Falls as lawmakers consider 9 cannabis bills. And just so you know, this is a edited version of the story. The full version of the story you can read directly on our website at www.highat9news.com. But a bill to force patients to get cards through primary care docs was among proposals for 2024. A Senate panel chaired by a member of the state's Medical Marijuana Oversight Committee shot down a bill on Wednesday with far-reaching implications for cannabis patients. Among 9 bills that would adjust South Dakota's medical cannabis laws, the legislative session in Peary, 7 remain alive, including bills to hike the price of a dispensary license, allow police to search dispensaries, and force prescribers to notify a patient's primary care provider about their receipt of a card. The now scuttled Senate Bill 82 was the most concerning for cannabis advocates, according to Jeremiah Murphy, a lobbyist for the Cannabis Industry Association of South Dakota. He says it would have required citizens to get medical marijuana cards from their primary care provider or through a referral from a provider, and defined what constitutes a primary care provider. Opponents argued it cleared a simpler path to criminal charges for doctors who prescribe marijuana, and, in quotes, Senate Bill 82 was absolutely the most critical threat out of what was there, Murphy told South Dakota Searchlight after the bill's 5-2 defeat in the Senate Health and Human Services Committee. They got a lot of feedback from patients on that one, and they poked the beehive as bees came out, they said. That threat of criminal charges for doctors was a deciding factor for Senator Eric Tobin, Republican from Whittier. Tobin is a nurse by trade and chairs the Senate Health and Human Services Committee. She also sits on the Medical Marijuana Oversight Committee with the bill's sponsor, Senator Jim Melhoff, Republican from Pierre. The Oversight Committee discussed but did not endorse a host of ideas during its 2023 meetings. Melhoff and Tobin have each carried cannabis bills into the 2024 session, but the pair were split on SB 82. The bill's attempt to define the term primary care provider in a profession where provider roles are too malleable to fit snugly into legal terminology was especially problematic for Tobin. Some people see cardiologists for primary care, she said. Others see doctors who may be unwilling to refer patients to that specific for a marijuana card. Many don't have a primary care doctor at all and get care through a clinic. During his testimony, Murphy noted that 30% of Americans have no primary care doctor. Tobin argued on Wednesday that medical professionals with questions about the legal veracity of their role as primary care doctors might be unlikely to prescribe medical cannabis to otherwise qualifying patients. In quotes, if there's a questionable piece to this, doctors are just going to pull it out, Tobin said. Melhoff has been peppered with feedback over this bill. He said most of it was from a reference to the ballot question that legalized medical marijuana 4 years ago, such as, are you trying to undo the will of the people, he said. That is not the case, Melhoff said. That is what I'm doing, he says. He presented the bill as a curative to his pop-up clinics and satellite medical offices that offer patients a pathway to a medical marijuana card outside of a traditional clinic setting. The initiated measure that legalized medical cannabis was endorsed by 74% of voters in 2020, and its verbiage foresaw medical cards flowing to patients through the conduit of a provider with whom the patient had a bona fide doctor-patient relationship via a direct prescription from the doctor or a referral. Melhoff's bill would have stuck that language, added a definition of primary care provider, and made clear that doctors who write pot prescriptions without a previous relationship to the patient are in line for a Class 2 misdemeanor. The current language hasn't prevented abuse of the system, Melhoff said, and in quotes, it's not being followed, Melhoff said, of the law's requirement for doctors to have a bona fide doctor-patient relationship before writing a pot prescription. In quotes, I think a lot of times they're preying on people's addictions, Melhoff said. Dr. Tamara Grove, a lobbyist for the anti-cannabis group Protecting South Dakota Kids, told the committee that nearly 3 times as many people than expected now have medical marijuana cards in South Dakota, and there are 13,150 approved patient cards in the state. That people could be getting cards to use recreational marijuana, Grove said. That means the will of the voters has not been respected, and in quotes, the people of South Dakota did indeed vote for medical marijuana to be law, Grove said. What they did not vote for is recreational marijuana. Well, the prohibitionists are hard at work in South Dakota, and this is Jason Beck for the High at 9 News Hour. What do y'all think about this prohibitionist talk?
Still fighting about this bullshit. Mm-hmm. It's incredible. We tried to fix this in '96 in California with Prop 215, and there was a whole bunch of language, but when you boiled down to it, if you were a physician, which meant you were an MD or a DO, and you gave someone a recommendation, whether it's verbal or in writing, the physician was protected from any adverse actions, and the person was now a patient. And we still fought for years get the DAs and prosecutors off our ass for all sorts of things. In a medical perspective, cannabis is not a lot different than telling somebody take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning. Mm-hmm. Hey, do you have to have a prior good faith exam and medical justification to prescribe marijuana? No, you can't prescribe it, and those rules don't apply. But doctors, to be blunt, are pussies. They are not fighters. They're trying to help people. When it comes to the government growling at you, they piss their pants and go, okay, whatever you say, right? And the few that I've known either ended up in trouble or, ended up in prison with me. Molly had some stones the size of what Stone was talking about earlier, and she fought the government, but they made her a target. And they did it for a reason, because they wanted to scare the shit out of other doctors into doing anything that looks the government in the eye and says, no, we're not going to do that. So it's just hard to watch this going on 25 plus years later. Mm-hmm. Still the same nonsense. I don't know what to even say about that, because the nurse understands, right? If you threaten the doctor with criminal prosecution, they ain't going to do it. I mean, that's caught up in the abortion struggle and all that stuff. You threaten the doctor and they don't want any trouble. They're pusillanimous. They're there to help. Don't threaten my license. I'll do what you tell me to do. And it's, I represent a lot of doctors, and some of them have some stones, but most of them are just pussies. They're not going to fight. They'll do what they're told.
Ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. They're blocking access, plain and simple, blocking access, creating fear. Doctors aren't going to, like Dale said, not going to want to write prescriptions. A lot of those doctors aren't probably even qualified to write prescriptions and won't even think about going to cannabis. But it shouldn't be easier to go to any doctor you want and get opioids than it is to go and get a fucking recommendation for cannabis.
Very true, Stone. Very, very good point. Very good points on there, you guys. Very good points. I do think that that the South Dakota legislature is way overstepping its boundaries in regards with this, especially when they had a voter initiative. But at the same time, too, they already the Governor Kristi Noem when the voters did pass this originally, just basically said, screw it, this isn't going into law. So they have a history of not listening to their voters in South Dakota, in my opinion.
Yeah, you beat me to the punch on that one, Jason. I was very surprised to see her name not pop up so much in this article.
Yeah, right.
Because she was the crusader against that. She was like, I don't care what they say. We know what's best for the children. We know what's best for the state of. We know what's best for the state. Next issue, get Herschel Walker back out here to be my spokesperson.
Oh man. We're gonna keep this train rolling.
There's supposed to be some privacy involved here. And the state should not be involved in your medical decisions. And I don't recommend anybody get a card if they require you. I just covered this story about losing your gun rights because you get one of these goddamn cards. A lot of people don't want it. There's a lot of reasons why this continues to just be more difficult than it needs to be. And you look around the corner and the guy in the trap goes, "Hey, I got an 8 for you over here." Oh, the trap's going to win.
You're right about that, Dale, because I found it interesting that the prohibitionist, the lady that she's stating the number of patients that currently have cards in the state, and she's saying that because the state anticipated fewer numbers of cards, then it means that there must be this mass adulterated use of cannabis, of people just claiming to have medical needs as opposed to wanting it for adult purposes, is just asinine to me. I didn't realize she was so smart.
People want to smoke weed. just get over it and figure out a way to make that easier and stop filling the prisons and prosecuting people with this and scaring everybody. And but that's my wishful thinking. And I've been in this battle for 2.5 decades now, and I've got the same wish. Stop this nonsense. But here we still are.